Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are listening to the podcast from. Welcome back to another installment of the Podium Podcast, where today it is the 2025 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix review, in which Oscar Piastri took his third win of the 2025 season ahead of Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc around the streets of Jeddah to most ultimately take the lead of the championship after what has been a crazy 6 weeks of Formula One. 1 week off, been 5 races in 6 weeks. It's been absolutely chaotic, action-packed. A great start to hopefully what will be a action-packed 2025 season. But as the race in Jeddah has finished, we will look back to the Grand Prix itself. Let's start all the way from the top, as we normally do on the podcast, where it was from the start, a very, very chaotic race. It seemed that obviously after qualifying, Lando Norris did have a lot of work to do, as his championship rivals Oscar Piastri and Max Verstappen lined up on the front row. Max Verstappen taking pole position after an exceptional lap in qualifying, but everyone was on the mediums except for Norris, who wanted to go long on the first stint as he was stuck really in the middle of the pack. But as the lights went out, Piastri did have a really good start, a better start than Verstappen, which you really don't say often, do you? Verstappen is normally quite good on the starts, but today he just seemed a little off. The lights did go out exceptionally quickly, might I note. But regardless, Piastri got the better of the starts. Going into turn 1, it is a very tight left-hander followed by a quick right-hander, which meant that the first corner was going to be pivotal in really deciding who was going to really come out on top overall. But as they approached the first corner, it seemed that Piastri did have at least a decent amount of his car in front of Verstappen, which enables him to really claim the first corner. As he was on the inside, he managed to really claim the apex. However, in Verstappen fashion, Verstappen just seemed to carry on, try and almost force a move which was never going to happen in the first place, and carry on. He went off the track and gained a leading advantage, which of course is something that he did try in 2021 several times, and he tried his luck again. And it seemed that, well, in a couple of laps time, you'll see what happened. But further down the field, as Verstappen did take the lead off track, it seemed that Tsunoda and Gasly got a little bit too close for comfort, crashing in turn 5 after Tsunoda, it seemed, just understeered into the side of the Alpine, forcing both of their retirements. Of course, around Jeddah, that meant a safety car was imminent to keep up the 100% record of a safety car in Saudi Arabia. It also let some people decide to try and do an unbelievable one-stop race right from lap 1, with Doohan, Bortoleto and Ocon pitting for the hards to see if they can really make the tyres last until lap 50. As the race resumed on lap 4, Verstappen was hit with a 5-second time penalty, which he would have to serve in the pit lane. This was, to be fair, I suppose, well, we'll get on to later, but it was quite straightforward, a slap bang 5-second penalty. But at a restart, it seemed that it didn't really bother him, as he managed to get an unbelievable start, leaving Piastri a little bit under attack, under threat from Russell in third behind. But within a couple of laps, as Piastri managed to get the tyres into their optimal window, he managed to close that gap into DRS range, which meant that the race was on. There was a race at the start for the win between Verstappen and Piastri. Further down the field, as Lando Norris made a move into turn 1 to take 7th from Carlos Sainz, Piastri was charging. He was charging, however, it seemed that it was more of a cautious charge and more of a, what's the right word to say, a prepared charge. Because with a 5-second penalty, Piastri realistically did not need to make the move on track. Rather, the 5 seconds would take care. The penalty would take care of itself in the pit lane. As the first stint was truly underway around the middle of the first stint, about lap 13, lap 14, it seemed that cooling, as expected in the desert, was an issue, and it seemed that some people managed to really conserve their tyres, while some people were really struggling, most notably the Mercedes, who, as you know, aren't always the best in the heat, but it seems that they were really struggling last night. But yeah, as Piastri managed to just keep the gap in and out of DRS range, the first pit stop started to trickle in, with Piastri actually pitting out the front of the runners first, putting him P8 in the pecking order, which also meant that McLaren saw the possibility of an undercut and went for it, because, to be fair, the undercut is really powerful around this circuit. That meant a couple of laps later, Verstappen had to react to McLaren's undercut to try and salvage the damage that the 5-second penalty was going to bring. This meant that he pitted on lap 22. He came out after a really slow pit stop, which is not really Red Bull fashion. Came out behind Piastri and Lewis Hamilton, who was yet to pit. Despite this, on lap 25, it seemed that Leclerc was leading the race with Lando Norris in P2, and obviously the top three, the net top three, as one might say, Piastri, Verstappen and Russell, closely charging behind. It seemed that Ferrari wanted to extend the first stint for Charles Leclerc to see if he can really push on in the latter stages of the race on what would be fresh hard tyres. And of course, Lando Norris was still on the hard tyres after doing the reverse strategy to those behind. Well, those ahead, sorry. As Bortoleto nearly crashed into his manager, Fernando Alonso, at turn 1, it seemed that Leclerc finally on lap 30 managed to go into the pits and go onto the hard tyres, as Norris did take the lead. With only about 20 odd laps to go, it seemed that out in front, Piastri was managing some sort of gap at around 4.5 seconds to Max Verstappen, and it seemed that Verstappen really did not have an answer for matching the Australian's pace. We know clean air is very important, but it seemed that the Dutchman was almost left quite dazed about Piastri's pace. Lawson was hit with a 10-second penalty for going off track and getting an advantage, as Lando did pit on lap 35. Leclerc finally made the move into the podium places for P3 after George Russell was really struggling on his tyres in the final moments of the Grand Prix. This also let Lando Norris overtake George Russell with a matter of laps to go on the charge for the podium places Lando Norris was trying to get, but it seemed that Leclerc did have enough pace left in the tank to get Ferrari's first Grand Prix podium of the year. But out in front, it seemed that Piastri was almost inevitable to make it actually the first Grand Prix in 2025 in which the pole sitter has not won. Down to a penalty? Only we will know. Well, we could make assumptions about it, of course, but let's turn to the talking points. The first talking point, I would say, is the collision between Tsunoda and Gasly. Lap 1 incident, 100% written all over it. It just makes life harder for Yuki Tsunoda, doesn't it? Really just a poor rookie error from Tsunoda. You going into turn 5, the wall comes quite close to you, and it seems that just everything seems to be going wrong for Tsunoda. Yes, he did have some sort of pace in qualifying to kind of match where Verstappen was. I say kind of. He was down in P9, I believe. But it was still stepping blocks for Yuki Tsunoda until obviously the Grand Prix, where he could have made some places, but it seemed that he was the one to make rookie errors. Something that he'll learn for sure, but still, something he really does not need after what has been a little bit of a difficult triple header for the Japanese driver. Now, of course, the talking point that everyone has been talking about, which kind of makes sense, but the incident between Max Verstappen and Oscar Piastri, the incident between Oscar Piastri and Max Verstappen going into turn 1, who was at fault and was it deserved, the 5-second penalty? Well, as a lot of people have been talking about, for me, yes, it was deserved. You look at going into turn 1, you look at Piastri, who managed to get an unbelievable start, and he did take the corner to his advantage. He was ahead at the corner, he was ahead at the apex, which, according to the FIA, meant that it is his corner. It also means that Max Verstappen should realistically back off and not try and hang it around the outside in some sort of hope that a gap opens, which we saw from Piastri's onboard. It did not. The gap was firmly shut, which forced Verstappen off into the onto the runoff area. So was it deserved? 100%. Verstappen got an unbelievable advantage coming out of the corner, which is an unfair advantage. Does that mean now that it really changed the course of the race? I think it did, to be fair. I think that it gave a little bit of a unfair twist to it. It was a bit, it coulda, shoulda, woulda, the race, because if Verstappen wasn't to get that 5-second penalty and he stuck behind Piastri going into turn 1 and really just played his cards right, then I think that Red Bull, well, Verstappen more particularly, did have the pace to go and attack Piastri for sure, 100%. We know how important clean air is anyway around there, but regardless, it was still what Red Bull will be thinking is an unfair penalty. I mean, we saw Christian Horner today in the paddock having printed out photos from Verstappen's onboard to apparently show how the penalty was unfairly given and that Piastri in fact closed the door on Verstappen, in which is illegal. But I don't think it was. I really do think that Verstappen was in his typical self trying to push the rules, and he pushed it too far. It kind of ruined his race because it meant a 4.5 second gap at the end of the Grand Prix. You do the maths, you minus 5 seconds off that, which he wouldn't have got if he didn't get the penalty. That could have been a race win for Verstappen, and as the, I suppose, title gets ever so close, it might be a big turning point in the championship later on. We also need to talk about Lando Norris. Lando Norris was, to be fair, a very, I suppose, he did a good job, Lando. And yes, we know qualifying was a little bit poor, very poor, in fact. A really costly mistake, which as a championship fight, in a championship fight, you should not really be making. But he managed to really do his work on Sunday, and a P4 in the long run is not too bad for the British driver. Yes, it could have been a whole lot of a better weekend for him, but mistakes do happen. Yes, in a championship fight they're more costly than as you were as a rookie, but still you learn from them, you try not make them again, and at least he's got some decent points on the board heading into the next part of the season, and ultimately he's still second in the championship, not too far off his teammate. If he didn't have the collision, could he have won this race? Yes, I think that it was down to the top 3. Realistically, if you put it in, Leclerc could have even, in clean air, he had the pace to really match those in front of him. So I think it really shows how important clean air is around in 2025, as well as the importance of qualifying, because it seems that the cars are so, I suppose, matched. And people say McLarens are faster. I don't think they are really by a lot. I think it might be a 10th max in there. But it shows that clean air, regardless of what car you have, is absolutely vital in order to get some good performance in. Looking also at the qualifying as well, it is the first race, I suppose, where the qualifier has not won the Grand Prix, which is says a lot in that fact, because it shows also how important qualifying is with the clean air, most importantly. Top four separated by 9 seconds as well. That is something that is absolutely amazing to see and amazing to hear. Going into probably 2023, if you said that the top four was separated by 9 seconds with three different manufacturers, then you would be laughing. Because it shows how much Formula 1 has come, and as I said before, how tightly matched the field is. It's been really good to see, I suppose, some close fighting. And I mean, if you look at it, it only takes a team to make minor upgrades to really get into the top five. If you're Mercedes or Ferrari, if they can improve by a tenth or two, then I mean, God, the fight could be between 6, 7, maybe 8 drivers even, which is something would be absolutely amazing to watch in 2025. But I mean, it's still early doors in the season, and I believe that, anything could happen. We saw it last year in 2024. You looked at the first 5 Grand Prix of the season, and God, yeah, they were a little bit boring. But now, from Miami onwards in 2024, it was almost anyone's race to win, which, I mean, is still a possibility in this part of this stage of the season. So anything's possible. I think if you look at a person like Russell, for certain, can definitely really maximize his car. Yes, it was a P5 in Saudi, but that is still one of his worst performances. A P5 is his worst performances. So if he gets a car underneath him, then, I mean, the possibilities are endless. Let's take a look at the predictions, which I think I've done all right in. Actually, maybe not. Okay, predictions. Let me just get the sheet up. Which, sorry, I'm very not prepared. Alright, qualifying. Qualifying, I put a Verstappen, Lando Norris pole position, with Russell in second, Piastri in third, Leclerc in fourth, and Verstappen in fifth, which I got completely wrong. Lando Norris finished 10th, with Russell was actually third, not second. Piastri was second, not third. So if I swap those two around, then that could have been points. Leclerc was fourth, which is, yes, that is correct. And Verstappen was actually pole position, not fifth, which is wrong. If we go to the race now, and race, I put Norris to win, with Russell in second, Piastri third, Leclerc fourth, and Hamilton fifth, which I think I got none of them wrong. Norris actually came fourth. Russell actually finished in fifth, not second. Piastri was not in third. Leclerc was on the podium, not P4, and Hamilton finished seventh, not fifth. So that is wrong. If we look to the middle of the race, and it was Leclerc, Norris, Piastri, Verstappen, Russell. So none of them were right, actually. Piastri, no. Verstappen. Nope, so none are wrong. Biggest Chris surprise, I put Jack Doohan. So Jack Doohan, probably not. Qualified P18, I believe, and finished P17. Nah. I did think going into this weekend he was going to be a somewhat built. Sorry, I'm not saying. But I thought after Bahrain he had a really solid weekend, so I thought maybe he could this weekend possibly match Pierre Gasly, his teammates. But it seemed that he was still a little bit far off, so there's a little bit of work to do for the Australian for sure. Biggest swap, I put Oscar Piastri. God, how wrong was I? A pole and a win. I did think that Lando was going to have the better of him this weekend, but it seems that I am a little bit cooked. My craziest prediction, no red flags during the Grand Prix. That is correct. Finally, I got one right. No red flags considering there's been, I think, 3 red flags in the last 4 Grand Prix. So no red flags is still impressive. Yeah, so that is 1, 2, 3 points out of 21 for Saudi Arabia. Let's go to the championship now. And in the championship, of course, Oscar Piastri has taken the lead of the championship, which, I mean, is something which an Australian has not done since 2010, which was his manager, Mark Webber, which is something that is very interesting, and he is 10 points clear of next challenger, Lando Norris in P2. Max Verstappen is only 2 points away from Lando Norris in P3, whilst Russell is kind of in a bit of no man's land, I suppose, in P4. But the battle for, I suppose, 5th to 7th between Leclerc, Antonelli and Lewis Hamilton is really ramping up. Only, about 16 points separate all of them. Obviously, now further down, Isaac Hadjar has made his way up to P14. Actually, on the same number of points as Carlos Sainz, who's managed to step up to P15 after securing a very solid P8 in Jeddah. Obviously, those still on the board to not score of Alonso, Lawson, Doohan and Gabriel Bortoleto, which I suppose they'll be hopefully eager to get on top of. In the constructors now, Williams have moved their way up to 5th position with 25 points, with the battle between Ferrari and Red Bull heating up with only 11 points separating the two for what would be 3rd position. And between, I suppose, RB, Alpine and Sauber for 8th, 9th and 10th, only 2 points separate them, which is even more interesting. Now, let's go for my drivers of the week and the flops of the week. Drivers of the week, winners of the week, has to be Oscar Piastri, has to be one for sure. He's managed to convert a win from not even a pole position, but he's also managed to take the lead of the championship, which, going into Miami and coming off a really, really tough triple header, is mentally a really good, I suppose, confidence boost for the Australian. He looks like he's got bounds of confidence. He looks like he can go and win almost every race this season. So, I mean, it'll take a lot of stopping from Verstappen and Norris behind to really get the better of the Australian. I'd have to say also Charles Leclerc has done quite well in P3. Managed to get Ferrari's first podium of the 2025 season in a Grand Prix format. And the thing is, though, on the last part of the first stint on the medium tyres, he was actually putting in lap times matching the top 3, which is something that a Ferrari hasn't done in a while. Maybe it shows that those upgrades from Bahrain have worked on a track like Jeddah, which means come street circuits, Ferrari could really be in the mix for possibly a pole and a win. Leclerc himself said that he needs to really improve on a Saturday in order to maximise Sunday's performance, and I think that if they can knuckle down on qualifying, then I suppose they could really well be in a fight in a couple of races to McLaren and Max Verstappen. I also have to say Williams have to also be a good shout for a winner of the week. Reason being, they managed to secure double points, the first of, I suppose, not the first of the season, but a very solid performance, P8 and P9 in front of Isaac Hadjar. It also showed a good display of teamwork. I think on a track like Jeddah, as Sainz said, his DRS strategy in keeping Albon in DRS in order for him not to get overtaken by Hadjar worked around Jeddah, and it really secured them very valuable points to bring them up to 5th in the Constructors on 25. Now, flops of the week. I'm going to have to go with, I suppose, Red Bull. Red Bull have to be a flop of the week. A second position and a DNF is something that you might think It's not too bad, but if you look at it, it was a race that Red Bull had in their hands, and it's a race that they should have won. It was their race to win. They could have made it 5 from 5 in Grand Prix wins in Saudi Arabia, but that 5-second penalty really did hinder them. If they were to give it back, if they were to give the position back right at the start, then who knows what the, I suppose, result could have been. But if you look at the end of the Grand Prix, a 4.5-second gap to Oscar Piastri, you do the maths. It could have been in their hands for sure. I mean, I did sing his praises, but Lando Norris was probably someone that could have won coming into this weekend. But of course, the crash in qualifying really hindered his progress, and I think it probably made his confidence, if it wasn't even the best in the car, even worse. He was pushing a lot, and yes, he managed to get fourth, but ultimately, in a, I suppose, mental type of way, it might put him as a little bit of a setback mindfully, due to the fact that he's lost the lead of the championship to his teammate. He's also lost ground to Verstappen in third position, which is something he doesn't really want to have coming off a really difficult triple header. Haas, I would probably say, have not been, I suppose, the best in Saudi Arabia. A P13 and P14 after Bahrain, which was a double points scoring performance for them. They've lost fifth position to Williams, and it just seemed that they really lacked a severe amount of pace around Saudi Arabia. It might be track dependent, however, that's something you really don't want when a 24 race calendar is combined with all sorts of different tracks. So they will definitely go back to the drawing board for sure and look at what they can improve on for what would be Miami next in the next couple of weeks. Well, I think that will wrap up a Saudi Arabian Grand Prix review. Make sure to like and subscribe, and have a simply lovely day. Goodbye.